Many people asked how this wall was built. Here's a step-by-step tutorial. First thing to realize is that I am not a real woodworker, and there may be better ways to accomplish the same thing. First step is to measure the length of the windowsill and notate the position of the window beam, as we will need to cut a notch. Measure once, cut twice, or something like that. The footage of the actual cutting of the notch didn't get made, but suffice it to say, this sawzall with tiny blade was used to make the notch. A jigsaw is probably a more appropriate tool, but mine was not handy. This cut can be a little bit sloppy, as it is completely hidden once installed. There is a pretty big margin for error here. A quick test fit to challenge my tape measure reading skills. Here is that notch we cut with the sawzall. Now to measure so we can build one of these vertical pieces. This finished unit will be made from 3 separate pieces of wood. A notch is required at the top to allow it to fit snugly into the windowsill. Measure the dimensions so we can cut a new one. In this video, we're only going to make a single one of these units, but once you know it's the correct dimensions, the most efficient thing is to make the cuts for all of them at once, like a miniature production line. All 3 of these pieces are the exact same length, 2 skinny ones and 1 fat one. To cut this notch, a scroll saw works great, but if you don't have one, a sawzall or a jigsaw will work just fine. Time for some wood glue. Glue is what really holds this together. Nails just hold it in position while it dries. This scrap of wood is used as a guide to keep the edges flush. It is important to take your time and make this part of the project as perfect as possible. Oops, a mistake. The nail poked out the end here. Don't worry, there's an easy solution. So flip it around, nail the other side. Here is the part where a real woodworker would have saved himself some trouble. There's a noticeable gap where these 2 pieces come together. That's because some dimensional lumber comes with very square edges. Like this. Other pieces, like these furring strips, come with a beveled or rounded edge. Once the glue is dry, use 100 grit sandpaper and sand all the faces smooth. Remember that nail we left sticking out? An angle grinder, especially one without a guard, is one of the more dangerous power tools, so make sure to take the necessary precautions. Next step is applying wood putty. I mix just a tiny bit of water in to make it a bit more soupy, as I feel this makes it easier to use. The idea here is to completely fill the crack and any holes, then leave just a bit of excess that can be sanded off later. Depending on the preferred level of perfection, sometimes it requires more than one application. I have a fancy Bondo scraper I'm using, but an old credit card works just fine for this. Once that's dry and sanded to your satisfaction, paint. This is just the first coat. Once installed, it will get painted again. Not shown is that the backside was spray painted black. This is so it doesn't show through the window tint when looking from the outside of the bus. Installation. The bulk of this unit is held in place with a single self-drilling screw. Many people incorrectly call this a self-tapping screw, but all screws by definition are self-tapping. Only certain screws are self-drilling. In this footage, the holes are pre-drilled because I just took what was already built apart so I could make this how-to video. It normally takes a bit more effort to get the screw to drill through the steel. For proper placement, hold the unit all the way up and to the right. This keeps it square with the edge of the window. It does make this slightly off-center with the window beam, but each one is installed just like this. Hold the windowsill in place and mark the screw holes. Move it to a more ergonomic position and start the screws. I'll add a link in the description for all the different screws I used. My apologies for placing my arm in the way. Maybe next time we can hire a competent cameraman. Just for a little added perfection, a little white caulk can be used to fill any little gaps between the unit and windowsill. Where the pieces of windowsill come together, in retrospect, a biscuit joiner would have been the proper tool, but instead I simply put a screw in at a 45-degree angle to attach the two pieces. Then more wood putty. Once dry, this will need sanding. Here is a quick look at the completed project. To finish off the top, a 1x8 fits perfectly into the space. Below the windows, I first installed some aluminum trim coil, then 1x5s over top to make the boxes. Questions? Comments? Leave them below. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.